What's up, everybody? This is Corinne with Witchcraft WI. Welcome to my very first full upload. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this Hobbit Door Wreath. Now you may be thinking to yourself, I've seen one of those before, and it might even be this one, which was my TikTok from a few years ago. Let's just say since I made this first wreath, I perfected the process, and she did not age well. She's dusty, she's crusty, she just looks faded. It was definitely one of those projects where I made do with what I had at home at the time, but I'm going to be showing you how to make it in a much better way. Look at this piece of wood. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Needless to say, today we are prepared. Let's start out with the tools. You'll need a handsaw, a ruler, an X-Acto knife, a pliers, a drill as well as drill bits, and of course, a hot glue gun. For supplies, you'll need a 12-inch grapevine wreath, which you can get at most craft stores. Same with an 8-inch wire wreath frame. And I like to use these 6-inch wood plaques. I like the fancy little beveled edge that they have. And a drawer pull. I like these rounded ones because they remind me of a Hobbit hole doorknob. And then these particular brackets I would recommend. I will show you the description from the ones that I bought off of Amazon. For our purposes, that's just what I've found that works the best. Now, Bilbo's sign is of course optional because you don't have to make Bilbo's door, but I like to, and you're going to need your big crazy person ball of twine if you do that. You'll also need some zip ties. I like to get the extra long ones just for a little bit of wiggle room to work with. And some foliage, of course. We're going to start working on the door, so you'll need your X-Acto knife. Now, if you're a real hobby freak like me, you might have some of these wood carving chisel type things laying around. I like to use the one that's like this right angle because it's really nice to carve like a nice deep line out. If you're normal and you only have the X-Acto knife, that is also fine. We're just going to use it to score vertical lines down the door to make it look like planks of wood making up the door. I'm about to show you here, using the X-Acto knife is perfectly fine. You can see those vertical lines scored down the door. They look great. However, I am going to use the chisel to deepen those grooves a little bit. I just personally like the look of that a little bit better. But like I said, totally fine to just use the X-Acto knife. It also looks good, and I've made ones like that before. Let me reiterate, you do not have to go out and buy the wood carving tools to do this. I just really like the deep looking grooves. They just add a little bit of extra dimension. But I'm about to show you again. Doing it the other way also still looks good. You really don't have to have the extra tool. Now, one thing you're going to learn about me is that I do not do math. If the measuring is not easy, I simply will not. I eyeball it. The same goes for using things like drill bits. I just eyeballed it. I compared which one looked closest to the bolt on the drawer pull, and that's the one that I decided to use, which happened to be 5/32. So I grabbed that, eyeballed the center, and then I drilled the hole. Now let's just be sure to take a nice long video of myself screwing the drawer pull into the door, and then take a look at that. Looks pretty centered to me. Next, we're going to use our handsaw to cut off the excess bolt that'll stick out from the back. Now, I actually screw the nut all the way on just so I know exactly where I need to cut it. And at this point, I'm just kind of marking exactly where I need to cut. As you can see, there's just a little kind of silver line where I just scored it a little bit with that handsaw. I actually took it over to my vise after this and clamped it in there and cut it over there. I didn't picture that because it just didn't look good. Now, this is the point where we're going to paint the door. You do not have to make bag end. That's just what I always gravitate towards because I like to make Bilbo's little party sign. So obviously I'm painting my door green. But you can customize it with any color that you'd like. I mean, Sam's door is yellow. I'm sure there's other doors that I don't know the color of off the top of my head that you could also make. I really like to go over mine with just a real light layer of paint so you can still see that nice wood grain through. And then in the meantime, we're just going to set that beauty off to the side to dry. I'd say probably for about at least an hour before you work on it more. And then in the meantime, we'll work on Bilbo's sign, which is super easy. All I did was print off this picture and Mod Podge it to a piece of crafting plywood. If you're super talented, you could also just paint it on there, but I always keep some matte Mod Podge around for this very reason. And then I had this on a bigger piece, so of course I just went over and cut that on my bandsaw down to size. And here's where we're going to use those special brackets. We're actually going to use them to attach that wire wreath frame to the back of our wooden plaque. I've just found that these work the best for this purpose. So boop, boop, boop. There we go. Once your brackets are all screwed and tightly in place, you can go ahead and put the drawer pull back in. And then I actually like to use a little bit of super glue to make sure that the nut will actually stay on the back forever, so I don't have to worry about it coming loose or falling off. Now, this point is where we're going to need our zip ties, because we are actually going to fasten our door to our wreath. So there is no perfect way to do this. You just kind of have to go on vibes and connect them. I do my best to find nice strong points on the wreath to weave the zip ties around, just so that I'm not risking breaking any parts of the wreath when I tighten it. And I also do my best to not let the zip ties be visible from the front, but if they are, we can just cover them up with some foliage later. So then this is where you need that pliers to just cut off the excess zip tie. You'll also need it if you need to cut any of your foliage later. And now we're ready for the really exciting part, the foliage. So because there's not a whole lot of interesting stuff to say at this point, I'm actually just going to talk about why I wanted to make this video. I have been wanting to start a YouTube channel for quite some time. I was just not finding any success on TikTok anymore, or Instagram for that matter, after uploading my projects to both platforms for quite some time. It was starting to feel really discouraging. And that's not to say that I necessarily expect to have more success here. It just was definitely time for me to try something new. And the idea of making a YouTube video, I can't deny, was pretty daunting. So I kind of put it off for a while because I was just feeling anxious and honestly too nervous to do it for quite a while. And then I decided, why don't I just do a video about something I know? Because honestly, I've been working on kind of a lot of different stuff lately and far less wreaths than I used to make. But I know how to make the Hobbit Hole wreath. So I figured this was the best place to start. Something I've done before, and done many times, and have basically, like I said earlier, perfected the process on. I have to interrupt that train of thought to say, this is what you real moss heads have been waiting for. Yes, I know you want me to put moss on this, and here it is. But I do want to say that I believe that not all crafts need moss. This one just happens to need it. In any case, my main goal for wanting to upload this video is just for those people out there who don't necessarily think that they're capable of making things, because yes, you are. If I can do it, so can you. And back to the topic at hand, I do actually have a useful tip when it comes to attaching your greenery and things to your wreath. I like to try to weave things into the wreath as much as possible, as well as using hot glue, obviously, and I use a high heat hot glue. Now, if you did do bag end and you want to do Bilbo's party sign, you can do it the way I did it, of course, and Mod Podge some paper to a piece of crafting plywood, or you could do the same thing with a piece of cardboard if you don't have crafting plywood laying around. It definitely doesn't have to be made out of wood. That's just what I usually do. And then obviously I take the twine that I mentioned earlier and drill some holes in my sign and attach it to my wreath with that twine. I do it this way because I like the sign to actually be free hanging, and that way it can kind of like swing back and forth when the door opens. This is kind of another point though where it's not exactly a perfect process. You kind of just have to weave that twine through the wreath in just such a way where it hangs the way you want it to. I don't have a perfect solution for the best way to attach it. That being said, you also do not have to attach it using twine. I've also made wreaths where I just attach it using glue. But like I said, sometimes I just like that sign to be free hanging. Now I have to admit something here. During my filming, at this point I actually thought I was done with this wreath. It was late and I didn't really feel like working on it anymore, so I went to bed. The next day, in the cold light of morning, I realized it was not done. It just didn't look quite as alive as I wanted it to. You know, you see a Hobbit garden and yard, and there's just more life. So I took it back to my craft room to finish it, and I have a lot, and I mean a lot, and I mean a lot of foliage to work with, a lot of greenery. I'm just one of those people who picks up anything like that on clearance, or if there's a good deal at, oh my gosh, rest in peace, Joann's, or if I find anything good at the thrift store. I'm always picking up foliage, greenery. People are always giving it to me because they know that I make stuff with it. So like I said, I have a ton to work with, fortunately. Now, honestly, I was going to try to attempt to make this a more spring-ish wreath, but I just always gravitate towards the oranges, the fall colors. I know you already saw me attach this piece of hemp twine to hang this from, but basically because I added more foliage, I removed it and then reattached it. So I always use a nice big piece of thick hemp to hang my wreath from the door with. Now, if nothing else, I'm honestly just hoping that posting this video will make a craft like this seem more approachable to someone who really didn't think it was in their league to do something like this. And to just show you it's maybe not as hard as you thought it was. It's so rewarding to make something like this for yourself. Now, this last little bit here is just me melting away some of the little hot glue spider webs that get stuck between things on your wreath. And if you do this, just be careful not to hold it too close for too long, because you might melt some of your greens if you're not careful. And that, my friends, is it. We are finished. You've now made yourself a beautiful Hobbit Door Wreath to welcome guests into your home. And if you actually stuck around this whole time to watch my video, I just want to say thank you. It really means a lot to me. And as the real YouTubers say, you could like, comment, and subscribe, or share this video with someone who you think might like it. You can also check out my website, which is witchcraftwi.com. And that's where I sell some of the stuff that I make. You could also follow me on TikTok or Instagram, also at witchcraftwi. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope to see you back here for some future tutorials. Goodbye.